control of appetite, metabolic syndrome, and developmental origin of the disease. The area in the brain which controls the appetite, it were in the hypothalamus, which control the appetite, and there is a feedback with the body and some hormones. And the appetite center located in the arcuate nucleus in the hypothalamus. Don't forget which nucleus, the arcuate nucleus in the hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus is responsible for the control of satiety and appetite. And this nucleus in the hypothalamus, we have two types of these neurons. What's the nucleus? You know, this is a group of neurons and consists of two types. We have a primary neurons and we have a secondary neurons. What's the definition of the primary neurons? It's that the cells that says metabolite levels and response to hormones. فكرتي بتنقص يكون هنا إما خوارنا خوين كخوارنا خوين أجت معيدة معنا هرمون معنا ولا توابع تقول معيدة هرمون ده بروا stimulation of the brain. The بروا feedback here the main body and the brain. You understand? While the secondary neuron, which synthesize input from the primary neuron, level stimulation the primary neuron and coordinate response via the vagus nerve. Jamie knows that she primary neurons. And the primary neuron, we have two types of primary neuron. Either excitatory or inhibitory. What we mean by excitatory? It means stimulate appetite. The barawaka appetite ziyaga. We have two peptides for excitatory neurons. One of them is called neuropeptide, Y, and the second called agouti-related peptide. So, excitatory neurons, it means stimulate appetite through two peptides. Neuropeptide Y and agouti-related peptide. While inhibitory, it means suppress appetite by releasing POMC, which is a pro-opiomelanocortin. And this POMC enzymatically is cleaved into some hormones. POMC, which is the inhibitory, is a polypeptide hormone which cleaves enzymatically to some hormones. For example, like ACTH, like endorphin, and like melanocyte stimulating hormone. You understand? Awesome. And MSH, melanocyte stimulating hormone, acting on melanocortin 4 receptor, which is involved in suppressing appetite. Regarding the satiety, is a complex. Sometimes some hormone responsible, and sometimes some part of the brainstem is also responsible. It's not exactly. This is sometimes related to the hormone or the brainstem. So, for example, in response to the stomach being filled with the food, there is a release of POMC in the brain, which suppress appetite. Suppress appetite. Bahoy leptin level, bahoy ghrelino leptin, and لما كان endorphin معناه بقول كسيلك يدوين أخوارله حسب بخير. شو كتير ناس اللي بقولي شيء هرموني معناه هرموني endorphin. chia ka euphoria يعني excitement happiness وإخوان حزك تعلمي إلى كبيرون شو هرمونك شكل لو كذا endorphin. But the feedback, as I told you, the primary neuron between the brain and the body, we have some hormones. Now, one by one, I am going to talk about them. For example, one of the hormones which is present in the stomach is called ghrelin. How it's released? It's always released from the empty stomach, which activate the stimulating neurons in the arcuate nucleus. Kawata, ghrelin is a stimulatory hormone, yani increasing appetite, stimulate appetite. Whenever the stomach becomes filled, stretched, the ghrelin decrease, so it will decrease appetite. So, in general, ghrelin is what? Is stimulatory appetite, yani increasing appetite. PYY is another peptide hormone which is released from the wall of the small intestine, which act in opposition to ghrelin. Kawata, PYY, sorry, inhibitory. Leptin and insulin, تقريبا the same effect. Leptin and insulin. Leptin is a peptide hormone released from the blood by adipose tissue, stored in the body. كسيك adipose tissue زيادة البيلك يا زورا أواني كفات يا زورا leptin شان زورا. أتاو adipose tissue زيادة البيلك leptin level زيادة البيلك. So leptin acting by stimulating inhibitory neurons and inhibiting stimulatory neurons in the arcuate nucleus to suppress appetite. A lack of leptin production or insensitivity to leptin associated with obesity. يعني أجر هاتو إما leptin كمان يعني وكو أنسولين إذا أجر يكيك أنسوليني هذا بلان سواني كتوشي دايبيت سبب دوجور diabetes mania, type 1 and type 2. Type 1 we don't have insulin. Type 2 we have insulin, but there is no stimulation. لما لو أكش نبي stimulation يمكن نخوشك بيبتشي diabetes mellitus. Regarding so, ghrelin is stimulatory, PYY is inhibitory, leptin is inhibitory, and insulin has the same effect. For example, if we have insulin resistance, يعني إما هيك resistant ما هي insulin توشي شيء بين diabetes. Another hormones called amylin, تقريبا الاستدية was found to be secreted with the insulin from the islet cell of Langerhans in the pancreas and still being investigated. يعني هي under investigation, but it's known to have also suppress appetite. Now, the second hormone can suppress appetite apart from it. Ghrelin. We talk about the scientific center, which is in the hypothalamus, in the arcuate nucleus in the hypothalamus. We talk about the primary and secondary hormone, excitatory and stimulatory, and which hormone is stimulating, which hormone is deactivate or stimulate appetite. And now, one other big topic, and we talk about the metabolic syndrome. Metabolic syndrome, but I bet in the developed country because of the fast food, because of the obesity, central obesity, abdominal obesity. زور كمان. But I bet لو لطاني كزور fast food. عشان يسموش أمام عليهاتهم. سامي زوري fast food أخواني. يوش عليه هذا ده لو جرب fast food أخواني. جاي هذا ما بوش. بس طاقتي يخرب بس كم. طلبات يكسر. More than 1 billion people are overweight. كألين overweight يعني body mass index is below 30 but above 25. Body mass index شيء يساوي شيء weight and height بكار يعني أجر هاتو over 25 people over 25 بس below 30. 25 to 29.9 is overweight. 30 and above called obesity. Obesity شلون توعوا؟ أبيبا grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. إن شاء الله طبعا الخوف أنا نسأل من دكتور بختيار يعني gastroenterologist and interventional endoscopies. يعني treatment معناه يسموه obesity. treatment exhaustion معناه يسمى sleeve gastrectomy هي intragastric balloon هي شو تصور؟ والله أويك obesity أبي أقدر بيشو كناو regarded as a disease. So please don't talk, please pay attention. طبعا الدروا ما هو صح عندنا مش الدروا طبعا خب شدان كان والله من الرخاتي وهاتوا محاضرة قبل نقول كان خواجاتي إن شاء الله. So more than 1 billion people are overweight and more than 300 million are obese, mostly in the developed world. بوجه إخواننا بشطاري الأفريقيا مش and approximately 80% of obese adults have morbidity arising from obesity. يعني obesity have a lot of complications if you are not going to treat it. There is, for example, simply sleep apnea syndrome. For example, non-alcoholic steatose of the liver and consequent fibrosis and maybe complicated by liver cirrhosis, etc. And it's defined as a group, a machia, defined as a group of symptoms, including insulin resistance, which is insulin pancreas, the metabolic syndrome, hypertension, hyperlipidemia, and central obesity. And 65 to 84% genetic component. يعني للصدى الشخص بهالشرط شو هذه أم حالة أنا genetic تأثيرية. What are the criteria? يعني احتمال المحاضرة بيته وسؤالي بيته what are the criteria for diagnosis of metabolic syndrome? First of all, it's called central obesity. دوشت معناها simply BMI working when body mass index, waist hip ratio working, which is more than 0.9 for men and 0.85 for women. But simply, very easy, is a body mass index. More than 30. But basically, I got body mass index, la bispesta bis 0.9 BMI she overweight. Kabuba 30 BMI obesity. So the first, eventuality, blood pressure. Always the patient always has history of hypertension. So obesity may be complicated by hypertension and cellular resistance and hyperlipidemia. Blood pressure should be how many? More than 140/90 millimeter mercury. And number 3, hypertriglyceridemia. Triglyceride. What cheap is triglyceride like the other level called? So triglyceride in the type of the steroid, please. For example, any patient has fatty liver. What's the definition of the fatty liver? Is accumulation of the triglyceride inside the hepatocyte cell. لبرو بيانا والله وايد هاتو يسأل دكتور جانا بيانو تم تشوري جقرد شوري سياني سبيانا تشوري جقرد خوش تحت يك الراسة بس بيانا ترايجليسرايد والله ترايجليسرايد عادة أجر زور بيت لكن لو بشري كأنت أمينيته ولا شو عبد لليفر عبد أجر هاتو دي أنا أو بيانا فاتي ليفر نفض NAFLD non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Balam agar hatu أو fatty liver هو inflammation بزحمة please بلايا وهاتو. agar hatu fatty liver مو inflammation PLN NASH non-alcoholic steatohepatitis. فعدتو أفرق بزانا. نفض شيو ناش يقينا كبربيزنا نفض is accumulation of a triglyceride inside the hepatocyte without inflammation. But whenever the patient develops hepatitis, with inflammation. Look at that here again, liver biochemistry again. أو أنزيماني كالذي فرع معنا وكو alanine transaminase aspartate transaminase say again increasing برزبتوا أو يعني indicate that the patient has hepatitis لما لو أجبتوش hepatitis وinflammation توجو أما احتمالية بيبقى fibrosis يعني تليف يعني جرجال برقبون أرما احتمالية مستقبل بيبقى شيء liver cirrhosis so should be careful. Triglyceride should be more than 1.7 millimole per liter. HDL, which is a protective one, HDL cholesterol less than 0.9 in men and less than 1 millimole in women. And lastly, glucose fasting or 2-hour glucose load more than 7.8, and in generally 140 milligram per deciliter. Hyperlipidemia, especially triglyceride, high blood pressure, high glucose level, and central obesity. And this is the definition of the metabolic syndrome. Metabolic syndrome is increasingly prevalent in developed countries. Why I told you that I am a hepatogastroenterologist because I face daily cases of chronic liver disease. All over the world, the two most common causes of the chronic liver disease is first of all is alcohol, and the second one viral hepatitis, B and C. They said that in developed country, the leading cause in the future of chronic liver disease will be NASH. المستقبلا the developed country كان بدأ in the United States لما يزور أصبح يكم كوست شيء الكول باينامين viral hepatitis نامين شيء بيا non-alcoholic hepatitis due to metabolic syndrome. And even weekly I face cases of liver cirrhosis due to non-alcoholic steatohepatitis. Studies in Europe, North America, and Australia have found the prevalence of metabolic syndrome to be between 12 to 25%. An estimate of current global prevalence of metabolic syndrome is approximately 16%. Metabolic syndrome is present in approximately 80% of type 2 diabetes mellitus. كواتا أني كتوشي type 2 السبب كوزا كتشيا metabolic syndrome كواتا preventable. يعني تو أكر يكتوشي type 2 diabetes mellitus بين أكر محاولة بك بلا بشري باشا glucose باشا بس أما بتشي بيرجيمه كي باشا ويدا وزن أو كذا type 2 diabetes mellitus نعم. And look, metabolic syndrome increased the risk of type 2 diabetes mellitus by 5-fold, and heart disease by 3-fold. And you know, we have some ethnic group have a predilection for لبرا بعض ethnic زيادة شيء metabolic syndrome ولا بشريكا. And central obesity is greater among South Asian than European, and is greater among European than African Caribbean. And central fat accumulation is always associated with insulin resistance. لبرا محالة كان central obesity than diabetes. أخي topic. So now you know about the metabolic syndrome very easy, and the complication and the criteria. The last topic is development, origin, and of health and disease. And there is a hypothesis called Baker hypothesis. And there was an epidemiologist in Southampton University who conducted a study, a survey, a large cohort, middle-aged men, and the cohort contained detail, but one of the details contained in the study was about birth weight. Quand الصديق كردوها لميدل-aged men, يجب لو criteria كبولا study كاباسي شكرا birth weight كردوها. Look, and when he analyzed the data, said that found the strongest correlation with the incidence of other disease was with the birth weight. يعني يصير يكرروها وكذلك disease يعني على قيمة birth weight وهو قاعد يخوي لكاتي مناضية and the correlation with the birth weight was much stronger than with smoking. يعني تصور لبirth weight أجر birth weight مشكلة هبة لكاتي مناضية زور ريسكي زيادة بوي توشي coronary heart disease بيه diabetes mellitus بيه وقت smoking شي كردوها and look and the risk of coronary heart disease, hypertension and type 2 diabetes mellitus related to the low birth weight. يعني أواني كان low birth weight احتمالية للفيوتشر زيادة توشي شيبن coronary heart disease و type 2 diabetes يعني boku building metabolism. And Chicago, in the study also, they said there's another subject called fetal programming. What's the fetal programming? It was discovered that biochemical adaptation took place in the fetus according to the supply of the nutrient via the placenta, and that this adaptation was programmed in for adult life. And this adaptation predisposed to individual to developing chronic condition in adult life. أقدر لكاتي حاملة على تو حاملة بيدان خد ناني باش بويد فاهمين؟ أما بو شو كان لبرا ويكا أقدر أو كسبلا لكاتي pregnancy good nutrition is very good for the fetus and to prevent complication in the future. And further studies show that programming involved switching on and off gene at critical time during fetal development. Genetic. One puzzling feature was that low birth weight could apparently be passed down to several generations. اگر دایک خوی low birth weight و احتمالیه من الله کشی low birth weight به لبروی احتمالیه genetic predisposition اليوم. زور سپاس.